tell their children that they love them. They say, well, a kid knows I love him. I've had arguments. They say, well, they know I love them. I don't have to tell them. The fact is that kids need to know. And the reason, of course, that we don't is why? It's because our parents never told us that they loved us. If we grew up in a household where our parents never said, I love you, and I care for you, and I wish the very best for you, and they never gave us praise and encouragement, we'll grow up being very uncomfortable. But I'll tell you this, that if you'll tell your kids you love them on a regular basis, they'll tell you back, and they will teach you how to love. So learn to use the words over and over again. Now here's 4 behaviors that parents can use to tell their children that they really love them. Behavior number 1 is the greatest gift that a parent can give to a child. It's called unconditional love. Make sure that the child knows that you love them 100% no matter what they do, no matter what happens, that nothing in the world can ever stop you from loving them 100%. It's absolutely critical. With my little girl and my little boy, I have a little game with them that I play with them called the love game. And I ask them, how much do I love you? And we go through a game and they say, well, this much. I say, come on now. I say, this much? Come on. I say, this much. And finally they say, this much. And I say, well, what about when I shout at you? They say, well, you still love me this much. I say, what about when I put you in your bedroom? They say, you still love us this much. I say, what about when I shout at you and put you in your bedroom and make you stand in the corner? They say, you still love us this much, Daddy, because no matter what we do, you love us all the time. Now that's the very kindest thing that you can ever convince your kids of. I do this to condition them. I do this because I want it driven so down deep into their subconscious mind that they are so totally loved that they can go throughout their life as little kids growing up and never, never, never question that their mommy and daddy really love them. Remember, the phenomenon of conditional love is what breeds the fear of rejection, what breeds feelings of inferiority and insecurity. Children, by the way, who are not brought up with enough love in their formative years develop what is called a deficiency need, and they spend the rest of their lives like Demosthenes with his lamp looking for an honest man. They spend the rest of their lives looking for the love that they were deprived of in childhood. Be very alert to that. You cannot give a child too much love in the formative years. You cannot love a child too much. You can give them buckets and buckets and buckets of love. Give them all the love they can absorb. So number 2 way that you show your love is with eye contact. Children have emotional fuel tanks, and they drink in the love of their parents through their parents' eyes. And when you look at your child with love and you say, I love you very much, the child just feels wonderful all over. So say, I love you, but look them in the eye. Do you know that most parents only look their children in the eye when they're scolding them? That most children grow up today with a very distinct uneasiness about direct eye contact from adults, that in our society, direct eye contact is considered a sign of hostility, because so many of us have grown up with our parents only looking at us when they're scolding us, and when they're speaking nicely to us, sometimes they just watch the television or read the paper. So look the child right in the eye. The 3rd is physical contact. Remember, children are very emotional and very visceral. They're very physical, and they need physical contact. They need to be hugged. They need to be kissed. They need to be embraced. They need to be patted. They need to be carried. And every single time that you hold your child with warmth and love, starting from infancy all the way up to when they become grown-ups, and you pat them on the back or put your arm around them or pat them on the head, physical contact, as it says in the song, touch my hair when you pass my chair, little things mean a lot. Contact with your children is one of the ways that you tell them that you love them. Now, interestingly enough, in studies that were done in the late 40s, they found that infants who were not held in hospitals and embraced while they were being fed actually began to atrophy, shrivel up, stop taking nutrition, and many of them died of a disease called marasmus, where they lacked that physical warmth and contact. So physical contact is absolutely essential to a child's healthy well-being. And number 4 is focused attention. By the way, it's interesting, many fathers have this idea that if you give a child too much hugging, a male child, a boy, too much hugging, too much kissing at an early age, you'll make them a sissy. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. The more hugging, the more kissing, the more physical contact that a little boy has with his mother and father, and especially his father, the more masculine, the more self-assured, the more self-confident he grows up. up. The less he gets, the more insecure, the more angry, the more stressed he is. So remember that you can't give a child, male or female, too much physical contact. And focused attention means that you spend time with the child every day, just you and the child, walking, talking, listening, no television, no newspaper, no one else, just a few minutes a day that tells the child that the child is really valuable. You see, children whose parents don't spend time with them alone are convinced that the reason mommy and daddy is not doing it is because there's something wrong with me. They don't know that the parents are busy or doing something else. They just feel that there's something defective about them, and that's why the parents don't spend the time with them. So be very careful. It's the perception of the child, not the reality. All right, now the next, number 6, is positive expectations. Positive expectations were found by Dr. David McClellan of Harvard University to be one of the best single determinants of peak performance as a young person. Positive expectations of the child by the parent causes the child to do everything possible to grow up and fulfill the parent's expectations. As a matter of fact, he found that there were 2 things. One was a democratic household. That in a democratic household where the child was expected to contribute his or her opinion at an early age, and in a household where the parent said, in effect, I believe in you. No matter what you do, I believe in you. I believe you're going to do well. That these 2 factors alone led children to becoming high achievers in their teens and in their early 20s, sometimes 10, 20 years ahead of children who were not brought up in democratic households where their opinions were solicited and valued, and where their parents expressed negative expectations. Like, remember, you've heard many times, kid works hard, comes home with 5 A's and a B. First thing the parent says is, what's this B? Not look how great the A's are, but what's the B? What this does is it completely demoralizes the child. So positive expectations are critical to the growth of a healthy personality. Number 7 is teach your children to say, I like myself from an early age. Teach your children to say, I like myself from an early age. I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. You see, high self-concept children, high self-esteem children like themselves too much to get into trouble at school. They get better grades, they're more popular, they're better liked by their schoolmates and by their teachers, they have much less a tendency to use drugs, they have much more resistance to peer pressure, they don't get into trouble, they don't vandalize. So teach your children to say, I like myself, I like myself, I like myself. With our children, we taught them as soon as they could talk to say, I like myself and I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. And they stand in front of the mirror and they look in the mirror and they say, I love myself. I love myself. And they act like they love themselves. People come up to us on the street and they say, and this is great, they say to us, those kids aren't afraid of anything. Those kids aren't afraid of anything. And that was our great desire after we came from very negative childhoods and very destructively critical parents. We wanted our kids to grow up not to be afraid. So these are the things that you do, the 7 key things to cause your children to grow up and feel terrific about themselves. Now, this brings us to an important point. Many parents who have been through our course at this point and earlier in the course feel very guilty and uneasy. They feel a little bit tense because they know they've shouted at their kids, they've been critical of their kids, they've hurt their kids are sometimes having personality problems, their kids having problems with grades, schools, friends, their kids have low self-esteem or feelings of inferiority, and the parents are uneasy and tense because they realize that they've done to their children what their parents did to them, and now they're looking at now they are reaping the harvest, if you like. They're looking at their children and they realize that what your children are is more a result of what you have done and said to them than any other reason. So, here is the solution to that. Absolutely amazing. It is possible for you to undo the past with this very simple technique. First thing you do when you go home from this course is you gather your children around you. You bring them around you and you sit them down and you apologize to them for all of your hitherto destructive criticism. You say to them, I've been to a course, I understand the effect of destructive criticism, and I'm sorry for every single thing I ever said or ever did that caused you to feel bad about yourself. And I apologize, and I ask you to accept my apology. Now, this is the most incredible thing that a parent can do for a child, because children want to love their parents, and they want their parents to love them, but it is the destructive criticism that builds a wall of distrust and fear and insecurity. And when you as the parent, and only you can do it, when you as the parent apologize and say, I'm sorry, will you accept my apology? The children feel suddenly liberated, like a great weight has been removed from them. Now, why do you do this? Well, because the purpose is for you to accept 100% responsibility for everything guilt-producing that you've ever done or said to them. Accept 100% responsibility and say, I am responsible, I'm sorry, I apologize. Will you accept my apology? And your children will be absolutely amazed. We've seen children whose entire lives have been transformed. 15, 16-year-old children in reformatories and boys or girls' homes. Problem children that have been in trouble for years, literally transformed overnight in personality. I had a couple of parents go through this course not long ago, and they went home, and they had a 16-year-old daughter, and there was no communication. She was withdrawn, she was shy, she did not talk to the parents, and the parents went home and sat her down and apologized to her. They realized that they'd been complaining and complaining and complaining. Do you know the average parent in America complains and criticizes their child 8 times for every 1 time they praise the child? 8 times, 8 psychological lashes across the developing psyche or emotions of that child. They realized they'd gotten into a habit of criticizing and complaining. They went home and they apologized, and they said she came down to breakfast the next day and she was transformed. They said she was like a nightingale. She was happy, she was laughing, she was extroverted. She and her mother became tremendous friends. That she and her mother and her father began going out for dinner. I mean, it was just like a miracle. I saw a family once where the father had raised 10 children. He'd come from a negatively, destructively critical environment, and he had been destructively critical of all his children. Many of them had serious marital problems. Some of them had serious psychological problems with their spouses. The oldest one was over 30. The youngest one was 14. At the end of the seminar, they're all in there, all the children, all the spouses, the father and mother. At the end of the seminar, he got up in the room and turned around and went from child to child and said, I apologize, will you forgive me? And as he went to each child broke down in tears and started crying. And by the time that circle had been made, everybody in the room was crying. It was absolutely phenomenal, and the family literally transformed overnight. Then the next thing you do, so logical, so obvious, promise never to do it again. Promise never to do it again. Why? To make sure that it's clear, and then finally, give them permission to remind you when you forget. Give them permission to remind you when you forget. Because you will forget, or when you slip from time to time. And let them say, Daddy, is that destructive criticism? Or Mommy, is that destructive criticism? And you say, yes it is, you're right, I apologize. You will find that if you make it a game to abolish destructive criticism, this is your goal in your household. Do not allow destructive criticism in your household. Abolish destructive criticism. Do not allow anybody in your household to destructively criticize anybody else. Make it absolutely clear that you can argue, you can fight, you can disagree. All families do that. But nobody is allowed to devalue or run down the other person. Make it a game and make sure that you catch each other and get it to the point where a person says, is that destructive criticism? Or a person can say, I don't accept that, and if you made a mistake, you back off and you say, I'm sorry. Now, with my little kids, I learned this idea before my kids came along. With my little kids, what I said to them is, do you forgive me? I'm sorry, I apologize, do you forgive me? And now sometimes we'll have an argument, or I'll send them to their bedrooms, and Michael will come to me, and he came to me the other day, and he said, Daddy, he said, I forgive you for sending me to my bedroom. And it was the cutest thing you could imagine. And I said, Michael, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I apologize. And if you apologize all the time, you keep the decks open. Now, one final point that I don't want to forget is this, is that in order to apologize to your children, you've got to get your ego out of the way, and you have to put the mental health of your children ahead of anything else. When you apologize, it takes courage and character for you to apologize. It takes courage and character. It takes tremendous strength for an adult to apologize to a child. But when you lead by example, you build courage and character in your children. Do you know how many people spend half of their life trying to avoid admitting I was wrong, I made a mistake? When you demonstrate courage and character to your children by saying, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. We don't use destructive criticism in this house. You demonstrate to them that they too can demonstrate courage and character. They too can say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I made a mistake. They too can apologize when they say or do something that hurts someone else. And setting that example for your children, you set them off on a foundation of high self-esteem, of high self-value, and enables them to spend their entire lives realizing their potential rather than compensating for their deficiencies. It is the kindest thing that you can do for a child, and I hope you do it for yours.